Biden has been warning of a Russian invasion, or at least his administration, since November, and they've been saying an attack is imminent for weeks now. There was concern that this past Wednesday would have been the big day, but nothing has happened consistently. Marc, has the U.S. become the little boy who cries wolf?
Well, I mean, there is that risk, of course, but I think, to be fair, what the U.S. said was, back in November that there was a buildup that was larger than the one that occurred last spring, which obviously didn't result in a war, and that a window would open, if that continued, a window would open in January for, an attack. And initially they were talking about the 20th of January, then they brought it forward a little bit to say that it could even begin earlier. And I think that was largely in response to what they saw on the ground. And, today there was, the number's been increasing over time, 100,000 troops, then 130,000 troops. And then today, the U.S. in Vienna was talking about between 169 and 190,000 troops. So, really what they're saying is that everything is in place. We don't know what he's going to do, but it could happen at any moment. No one can say.
Yeah, and we're hearing numbers of 150,000 troops spread along Ukraine's border. And we know that this weekend, Russia's Black Sea Fleet will be conducting military drills as well, with Putin presiding over them from a command center. Emily, what is the message that Putin is trying to send to the U.S. and to NATO allies?
Well, Putin definitely has the attention of the Biden administration. And really, the Biden administration, they did not intend to focus on Moscow. They did not intend to focus on Russia. Their main focus was meant to be China and Beijing. And this has certainly been something, I don't want to use the word distraction because it's certainly a priority, but something that has taken the Biden administration's focus and that they've really had to pivot to and to look at. I think there are still questions, huge questions that are lingering out there. Is Putin actually going to invade? What does he want? You have seen that diplomacy go back and forth with the U.S. and Russia kind of trading paper on what their demands are going to be. We know that Russia's latest response to the U.S. Recommendations and proposals for de-escalation, Russia said that it was unsatisfactory and that they ignored concerns that Russia has about NATO expanding further to the east.
Yeah, a lot of tough talk there. And I'm glad you bring up China, Emily, because Marc, Xi Jinping and Putin met at the beginning of the Beijing Olympics in what could only be seen as approval for Russia's opposition to the expansion of NATO. But beyond that, China has been fairly quiet. What would prompt Beijing to take a more active role here and intervene more forcefully?
Well, I don't think they have any intention or desire to intervene or get involved in Ukraine. It's a difficult issue for the Chinese. They, on the one hand, they share very much an approach with Russia to the U.S. and to U.S. alliances. So it's easy for them to say we support Russia's views on NATO and that NATO should not expand. They feel the same, and it was an extraordinary statement actually that the two leaders made in a joint statement. It was 6,000-word statement in which they kind of set out the Russian and Chinese view of the world. A lot of that was focused around what they see as containment efforts by the U.S. and NATO. In Asia, it's obviously not NATO, but it's other U.S. alliances. So they share that. But actually, Ukraine and China have a relationship that's quite strong. The Chinese were careful not to recognize or support Russian actions in Crimea. They were quiet about that, and they'll be quiet again. But I think, primarily they'll be hoping that there won't be an invasion. It will mainly create problems for China. And for I think the main concern in the U.S. would be, if it does come to war and sanctions, what would the Chinese response be on sanctions? Would they help the Russians to circumvent?
Marc, the U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate specifically, was looking at a potential sanctions package. They have yet to come to an agreement on that, but they were also talking about leveraging sanctions against Putin right now, not waiting until he attacked, but sending a signal that the buildup that he is doing is unacceptable. What sort of message would those current sanctions send if the Senate was going to get them together? And has the U.S. missed an opportunity here by not being able to bring forward that sanctions package already?
Well, it's again, that would be a difficult one for the administration because you have, you then have to go. We kind of know what Putin is doing now. He's creating a whole series of options, all of which, have a benefit for him. So if he continues with the kind of pressure that he's putting on now, he causes ructions in Western markets. He causes costs to Ukraine, significant economic costs. And he has, the world's attention and the U.S. attention on the issues that he cares about. If he then goes to war, he has that option on the table at all points, but we simply don't know if he uses it. But if you implement sanctions, now, on the one hand, you're telling him, that thing you're doing right now, that's not acceptable. The thing you're doing by, causing costs to Ukraine, roiling markets in the West, causing us costs, that's not acceptable. But on the other hand, if he is intending to go to war, then you might just trip him into it. You're basically saying that we're pulling the trigger now, so you may as well go because it's already done. So it's a very difficult decision for the administration to make, and I wouldn't envy them that.